this just in case. So we're on lesson 4 and main notation rules. And the reason why is this so important is, for example, when you have to write your own piece of music, you might want to know how to write the notes and how to space them out, all of these rules. So please read these rules on your own. And I'm now going to switch to the music stuff and just discuss these rules with you. So for example, when we are dealing with piano music, we really want to use the grand staff. Oops, wrong color. We will use grand staff, and we will make sure that the two systems will be connected in the beginning with the bracket, with the bar line and a bracket, and then every measure will have a connected line like this. We will also try to space the measures evenly, unless we really need to do it otherwise. For example, if all of a sudden we have too many notes in one measure, then the preference would be to space the notes so it would be readable, and then the measure will get more space. Then we're writing treble clef, bass clef. So these two clefs are, just a traditional piano music, something that you normally see. If you need to move up with both hands, then you will use both treble clefs, or if you need to move down with both hands, you will use both bass clefs. When we're writing notes, we use lines or spaces. For the ovals, the note will always be an oval. And then there is a stem for shorter durations, for quarter notes, eighth notes, and half notes. There is no stem for whole notes. This is my time signature, 4/4. So I'll make sure that 4 quarter notes fit in every measure. So here I will get the whole note. That means there are no more notes. Then I might replace one duration with the rest, correct? And if you see, I always try to space my notes in such a way that visually it appears, that we will hold the note longer. So it would be in the beginning here, and then kind of like an imaginary, line for every beat. So that would make your music readable. It would be much easier to read for someone who doesn't know you and who has not seen your composition before. In the left hand, of course, these blue lines, it's just something that I'm doing now, optional for you to understand how we space music. You will never see that in the real score. When we're writing music in the bottom system, we will really want to match like the position of the note. So when the notes are together, they will be on top of each other. Like, for example, here, I could have my left hand moving. Okay. Oh, actually, I can do this. I can make it like a dialogue. So right hand plays first, and then left hand plays, and right hand plays. Now notice that for this note, I am using a stem up, and for this note, I'm using a stem down. So there is a rule. You will use stem up for all of the notes that are below the third line, and when it's up, it's on the right side. You can still use for the note on the third line, but then from the third line on, the stem will go down like this. So the stem really, the position of the stem up or down is not going to change anything about the note or the way you're going to play that note. It's just a notation convention. That's it. So it will always go up, it will always go down from now on, like this, even if I use ledger lines. And similarly here, when I go down, even if I use ledger lines, my stem will be on the right side and it will go up. Got it? So now I sort of started writing a composition. I chose a time signature 4/4. I decided that my right hand is going to be in a treble clef, left hand is going to be in a bass clef, and I kind of stopped on the C major position. C major position, most likely, so far. Because right now G is my highest note, so probably it will be finger 5. In the left hand, my lowest note is C so far, so probably I will just stick to C major position. So 5 notes in the left hand, 5 notes in the right hand. And I already created something that could resemble a phrase. Like maybe something like this. I didn't write this last note. Or maybe I will add another note here in the right hand. So there's so many ways, so many options you would have. You can really play with these options. So this way, my second half would be. So this looks like a phrase, but it doesn't have a solid ending. And the reason it doesn't have a solid ending, because it does not end on the first note of the scale, which is also called tonic. So for example, from this collection of the notes, like if we're in treble clef, like this collection of the notes, if I decide that my tonic is C, then another C would be the tonic, and then I could use ledger line, and this would be another C. So this is C4, C5, and C6. So these three C's will be tonic in the C major scale. And the larger scale is actually a concept that we will be learning later, but I'm just giving you heads up. In general, in Western classical music, we work with 2 scales, major and minor. So major or minor. So minor just kind of sounds sad and major sounds happy. Those are like basic moods associated with these scales. And like if I'm, for example, playing this in C major, it kind of sounds happy. But for example, if I would play in A minor, it's immediately like a mood that's different from. Okay, does it speak to you? It's kind of really hard to like scientifically explain why this scale makes a certain emotional response in us, but it sort of does. And in general, people that speak different languages, if they sing a song that is in major, they would kind of know that even a person who doesn't know the language, doesn't understand the words, they would understand that the song is happy. And same with the songs that would be in a minor key, they would sort of, people would sort of get that the song is sad just because of that key. Okay, so I ended up writing one phrase here. It's a statement, but it's not finalized. So first phrase. Next, I will need to write another phrase. And what's interesting about Western classical tradition is that usually phrases come in response to each other, or even like the substructures, the subphrases, smaller elements that go into the phrase. They will also come in a balanced way. For example, you have something that is 2 measures long, and then you have a response that's 2 measures long also, or 4 and 4. So we deal with square structures. So that whole thing that makes you feel comfortable about the classical music when you hear it is because it's very square, it's very symmetrical. So if you want something that sounds very symmetrical, that you will want to create a response that is the equal number of measures. Okay, we will want to fill other 4 measures with something. And another interesting thing about the classical music, about the Western classical tradition, is that often phrases come in response to each other and they begin the same way but have a different ending. So that technique is called question and answer phrases. I could begin a new phrase the same way, but you see, now I missed the line. So that's definitely not a G. I need to change it. Make sure, yeah, E, F, G. I could alter my left hand, or I could just stay with the same thing, so it would be simpler. And then I'm going to move to the different system. And that's one of the mistakes that students do when they read music. Sometimes, for example, you could have rest for the entire left hand part or for the entire right hand part, and then students try to combine the 2 systems. We never do that. So we go this way. We read both hands and then we move here. Okay, so we always read from left to right and then we jump to the next line. And this jump really means nothing. It's the same when you have, you know, a word split between a line and then when you're reading, right? You're reading a line and then you go to the next line. So there's no secret meaning in that. Okay, I'm going to get rid of these lines now. So I copied the first measure, but let's change it this time. Dun, dun, dun. Maybe do a small variation. Dun, 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 dun. And then the ending. Ba, 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 bum. Does that sound like a good ending? You can participate, you know. Or would you like to sing a better ending? Bum, 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 bum. Okay. So basically, this is how the composition process works. You just work your ideas. You sing, or you just go, or like. But if you don't finish the second phrase on the tonic, on the first note of the scale, it's not gonna sound like an N. Like, let's experiment. Definitely doesn't sound like an N. So only when it lands on the tonic, it sounds like an N. So we really need to make sure that C is somewhere here, or here on the third beat, or even on the first beat. Da da dum, da da dum, bum bum. Yeah, let's just make it a long note. Da da dum, like that. And then we can think about the left hand line. Maybe like this time. Like instead of, yeah, actually I'm copying the left hand this time. And the combination of left and right creates a contrary motion. So this is contrary motion. Can you understand why? Contrary motion. Look, we're dealing with the same notes. F, E, D, D, E, F. The same group. But we're going to play them in the contrary motion. And then like G, C. So this is tonic. First note of the scale is tonic. And actually another important note of the scale is the 5th note of the scale, or the top note of the 5-finger scale. And it's called dominant. Dominant. So if you create something like that, dominant, tonic, or like that is sort of like a drone bass, or like this. So this is already a way you can use use left hand for creation of accompaniment style or textures. Tonic and dominant is a really good collaboration team. So they do very well in creating accompaniment patterns or in creating ends of phrases. When you go like in the left hand, so on that dominant going into tonic, you can build a melody in the right hand and it will sound very strong, like an ending. Just an idea. You don't have to remember all of these, but it's kind of an interesting thing to do, an experiment. Okay, so dominant tonic is a really nice pair of notes to know. So why did I do this? I wrote an example of composition for you because I will ask you to write a composition next time, for the next time. I think writing a composition will sort of make you walk into music from the back door and use all of this quick knowledge that you received about music notation in practice. Instead of reading, you have to create something on your own. Okay, so let's have this. Notate your own composition, similar way. Write your time signature, write your notes. I'm pretty sure that nowadays it's not difficult to find the template of music stuff. You just Google music stuff and you can find a template. You can even find templates that already have like I'll show you. Well, of course, this is an app that I'm using, but I'll show you something. So here, for example, in this app, I have a number of templates. You can use something that has, larger lines or smaller lines, and something that already has the brackets. And there are some templates that already have the clefs, so you don't have to write clefs. So you can always read this text. It's just a reminder about these rules. Here's the assignment. Now let's take a look at the German song, right? So our goal here would be identify the notes quickly and accurately. What can our strategies be? You can find the notes in each hand, right? So you definitely want to know at least one note, like know for sure what that note means. And then from there, count the rest of them and figure out what your position will be here and here. Then decide what your fingers will be. You can look for patterns because very often we have repetitions in music. And if you understand where those repetitions are happening, you don't need to read note by note, but you kind of read, patterns, chunks of notes. And then you can also use the pen and write finger numbers, write direction of phrases. Okay. So here I wrote the notes for you, but can you make sure that you can identify at least one of the notes in the right hand and in the left hand? So this one is a C4, right? Middle C, C4. And this one is C3. We are in a C major position in both hands. Okay, can I hear from you? Are you familiar with this notation? Do you recognize C major position?
Yes.
Okay, C major position and C major position. So C4 and C3. Okay, that was not very clear. 4 and 3. So I'm going to place my hands on 2 C's and then I play. So quarter notes. Let's say my quarter note beat is this. I really want to stick to this duration of the beat, to this pulse, and not change it. So stay longer, then left hand plays. Okay, now just looking at this composition, do you remember what I was saying about question and answer phrases? Do you see how the second line is actually the second phrase and it comes in response to the first line? So right hand plays the first phrase and it sort of has an open ending. It invites us for continuation, but then left hand closes it with, so it closes with a move down the scale that stops on the tonic, and that gives you a very solid ending, right? Okay, let's look at another composition. So now it's the same song, but in an arrangement. So here I created an accompanying line in the left hand that uses contrary motion. That's why the phrase in the title, contrary motion. So my hands will begin on the same key. You have two options. You can just press with both fingers, like on a different, maybe like one finger higher and another hand lower, like this, or you can just emit the shorter duration. I can do this, or I can just begin with left hand and not play the right hand. And then just the left hand. Or so the purpose of this sort of overlap that I'm creating is that first of all, students understand that the same middle C can be written in treble clef and in bass clef, and also kind of stimulate your maybe faster thinking, so you could understand, okay, I don't need to press with both hands. Maybe I can just skip one hand but still track the voices. So in music we cannot just not write a note, because we want to keep track of the way both voices develop. So if you just like take one note out, then that voice is not complete. The same in a choir, for example. Sometimes voices meet on the same tone, but those notes are not disappearing from the score, right? Everybody has their note. So the same way here. We don't have to worry about this overlap too much, because there's not a lot of music that does overlaps. And even in a more advanced music, that of course when the overlaps happen, then we make a decision which hand is going to play the note, right hand or left hand. Here, same way, you can either make a decision which hand plays, or just don't worry and play with both hands. Okay, you could have difficulties here playing measures 5, 6, 7, where left hand is not exactly predictable, over here. And that would really take some time for you to get used, to involve these fingers. 3, 5, like you would actually break it down to the measure that you need to practice, and like, and then really drill that. So you would drill how to, so you would have to practice until it feels good to use these fingers. And then 4, and check this out again, we have G, C. So that's the dominant tonic relationship. It's not this way, but this time it's going up because we're using the 5-finger position down from the C. But it's again the dominant tonic that creates a very strong ending. Okay, let's look at something else. So this is the middle C position, right? A new piece, March 4.4. So here our goal is to connect music notation with hand and finger positions on the keyboard. So sometimes, especially if you're not familiar with certain notes, you really need to make sure that you're finding your position on the keys. So think about these strategies, and you can always use annotation to help yourself, to help guide yourself. So now I'm going to delete this. Oh, sorry. So we can talk about this again. So can you look at your right hand and identify the first note of the right hand? Okay. Can I have you like? Sorry.
Is it C?
The right hand is.
Is it B?
No. Let's. Okay. Let's.
Is it C? Is it? I think it
It's
is
a
C.
C. It's a C, but
C.
it's a C5. How do we get there? Do you remember the G? G, and then we go up. So when you go to the space, it would be A. Then you go to the
C.
next line, it's a B. So it's a C5. Okay. We're on a C5. And then if you scan through, your highest note is this one. You don't have anything higher than this. Look, you never use a ledger line, because higher than this would be the first ledger line, and we don't have that. Like higher than that would be this. Sorry, not very nice writing. This, but we don't have a note like that. Okay, so that leaves us with the following notes in between, right? These three notes are in between, and then C. So this is a C major position. C5, G5, and then this is F, E, D. Just remember how the C5 looks like. If you have memory for it, it will be very, very easy in future, because it's easy to see the 5-finger position going from here and then like one up, skip up. Now left hand uses middle C, right? C4, but then it goes down. So left hand is sort of in that 5-finger position below middle C. Goes down, then it stays. Then it goes back up. So only 2 notes right now. So 1, 2, that's the finger numbers that I would probably use, because it doesn't go beyond that. So 1 on C, 2 on B. And then check this out. In the end, again, we have C, G, C. That's again the relationship of tonic and dominant. See? And this time again, it drops down to the dominant, goes back up to the tonic. And I will be using fingers 1 and 4. So my left hand is going to play only 3 notes, C, B, and G. That's it. My right hand uses 5 notes of the 5-finger position. Actually, yeah, it does use all the 5 notes. Sometimes, there are some solos where not even all the 5 notes would be used, but here we do have all of them. So let's check this out. I made a decision to play all of these more like a staccato. Do you remember that touch? That it's bouncy and not like this. Because I think if I play just non-legato, or if I play legato, then it wouldn't be very much in the character. This way I'm able to achieve more march-like character. And it's another situation when the performer's decision is actually the most important one. So I as a performer am going to project what your experience as a listener would be. So whether I'm going to play it more like a march or more like a beautiful melody, lyrical melody, we have a lot of freedom in music, even in performing music. I can play it faster, I can play it slower. So look, what happens if I play it faster? It's less of a march then, right? It's more like a dance. Slow. Probably this is too boring, right? So there are all of these means. And then you can use the dynamics. You can use the suggested dynamics, begin mezzo forte, and then do piano in measure 5 like this. And then grow, and then go softer again. These variations are so easy to do, but they're really making a big difference when somebody's listening to music. Like, it just really adds to the expressivity. So what would be my next thing here in my analysis? So I analyze my position. Let's delete this. Probably next, I want to write myself reminders about fingers, because even if I know that this is C, I want 1 on C, but then here I don't see a finger, so I'm going to use 5. Then it skips to the next one. I'm going to use 3. Then it skips to the next space. I'm going to use 1. So here, probably for you, it would be best to write your own fingers. And then it goes to the next note. It's going to be finger 2. Then just repetition of the same note. I've seen students writing again and again and writing D, D, D. Honestly, I think this is not necessary, right? Once you figure out that the first one is a D and you will use finger 2, then you should see that the rest of them would also be the same, right? So these are the same notes. That's a really good skill for you to develop if you don't have it. Like, at least see when it's the same note, or when the note moves just one up or just one down. That will speed up your reading. Of course, when it goes like this, it's kind of hard to, hard to decide, okay, how many. You would have to count each one. So here, just memorization of this position. The note on top of all the 5 lines is a G, and it's a G5. So here memorization kicks in. You'd be so much better off if you just memorize it. But if you can't, whoops, I did something funny. If you can't memorize, then you need to write finger numbers for yourself. So you will write 5, and then 4, 2, 3, 1, 2, 5, 3, 2, 1. So this happens to many novices, pretty much to everyone who begins playing piano. There is too much going on with coordination between the hands, and then you have to have a pulse and make sure that pulse is steady, and then you have to keep track of note durations, right? And read the notes and kind of memorize. So all of that has to come together in a package. And a way to have a shortcut is to read through finger numbers a little bit. So have that extra layer that's sort of like a safety net. Okay, you know some of the notes, but you don't know all of them. And then the finger number stays as a reminder. And since you're in the same position, you just press the finger that is indicated there. Obviously, don't rely only on that, because after a while, this reading system or this reading strategy is not going to be reliable. You will need to know, you will need to recognize certain notes. But as you're slowly recognizing and building your vocabulary, then rely on finger numbers. Okay, do we have any questions about this one? Would I take that as no questions? Okay, moving back. You are very quiet today. So this solo 4.5 is basically the same thing. The same composer, but the composer or the editor edit just, the composers publish their compositions with different publishers. So I took this and the only difference in this publication is the edit slurs here and here, which creates a variation. It's very nice. And then there is one more change here. So remember these notes today: C4, so this one is C5, and this one is C3. Remember these 3 notes. And then remember the G, G5 as well. Okay, so I'm turning this off, and I will show you one of the technique exercises. We've never looked at the technique exercises. So here we have symmetrical fingers. The goal of this exercise is to practice symmetrical fingers when we would use the same finger, but obviously it would mean opposite direction, right? So we begin on middle C in the right hand, middle C in the left hand. And that's what we end up with. Then again, I share just a little. Check out. So in the end, I use two notes in my left hand, in my right hand, like this. And in combination with the note in the left hand, it actually forms a minor chord. That's the A minor. You see, my center note is middle C, but because I go both ways, the position is actually A minor. And it sort of sounds, it begins very happy, right? But when it ends on a minor chord in the end, it's definitely a minor key and it sounds a little bit sad. I could do the same thing and just transport this position to the center note of C major, right? And then play it in this position. Notice how I was holding a stable pulse. You could predict when the next note is coming. Sometimes when students are playing, we would have a situation that they play like this. So I created these extra stops, and that really bothers, because once we set the pulse, everybody wants to hear the continuation of this pulse. It just sort of, it actually activates a certain area in our brain that predicts that pulse. There was a study that showed that people react differently. The brain reacts differently when there is music with a steady pulse, or when there is an activity with the kind of like recurring pulse and rhythm, versus a rhythm that is completely erratic. And we set the expectation of that pulse, and when we extend the note duration just to think about what comes next, or just to relocate our hand to the new position, that sounds wrong. That's actually wrong for music performance. So you really want to keep your pulse steady. If you're not able to keep it in a certain tempo, then you need to use a slower tempo. Slow down, and then do it in a slower tempo. So this is one of the strategies that I'm discussing very often. Slow down. So repeat, everyone. Slow down. This is one of the main things you want to do when you practice music. And also another strategy is called breakdown. So breakdown means you're going to break the piece down into smaller pieces, and even smallest pieces that you can understand and reproduce. So if one measure is one small piece that you can do, okay, I can do that. I can do that. Then you try to combine the two small pieces. Okay, don't try to play through the piece, because you may end up with so many mistakes that going back and revising them will be actually a problem. You may create even more extra mistakes. So you did that little part. Okay, I can play that with a steady pulse. I'm good. Then the next part. Okay, next part is this finger sort of. If that doesn't work, I'm going to practice quickly right hand, left hand, and then can I do that? Yeah, probably. And then I end on this. So I was able to do this. Then I will try to do the whole line. and then combining the small parts until I can get the whole piece back together. It takes a lot of experience for someone to begin right away and play through the whole thing without mistakes. Okay, so we still need to work on figuring out all of these elements. Notes, well, first of all, like even place your hand in the right position, right? Right position, right fingers, right notes, right durations, and pulse. So all that needs to be in place. And then after that, you can stay creative. You can think about your tempo. You can think about your dynamics. You can think about how you're going to do it. Is it going to be more staccato or more legato? And really, like all the expression means that you can use to create a character.